Hey, good morning, all. Welcome to the Common Good Podcast. Boy, we got a treat for you coming today. We're launching a brand new segment to our Common Good Podcast. Many Mondays, Casey Franklin right there and I are going to talk to each other. We call this red hat, blue hat talk. Casey and I have known each other a long time. We've been, I don't know, we should probably count up the numbers, 35, 40-ish years, something like a long time. Like I was just barely not a teenager. Yeah, you may have been a teenager when we met.
Yeah.
So we've been friends a long time. Both faith leaders, both do other things in our lives now, and text an awful lot to each other, and really disagree about Donald Trump, and text a lot about that. So we thought, hey, let's take that conversation more publicly and share it with others. So we're super excited about this. This is our first episode of this. So Casey, super good to have you on. Thanks for doing this.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's an honor.
All right. So I'm in Minneapolis. We often start these little chit chats with the weather. It's a perfect summer day here in Minnesota, in the southwestern or southeastern part of Minnesota. So great time here. You're in Colorado. How's life in Colorado?
It's good, man. I'm in the beautiful Rocky Mountains. We got a blue sky today. Perfect 55 degrees, sunshine, cool mountain air. It's wonderful. It's beautiful.
Still love America, do you? You still okay with it? You all right? By the way, that's a bit of a running thing with Casey and I. All right, so a little background. Say it again.
That's kind of a loaded question.
Yeah. So all right. A lot of things are going to come out of this. We're going to tell some histories about how we've gotten to know each other, what we talk about, what it's like to have a friend. And I also have a lot of people I care about and love who I really disagree with about Donald Trump. I mean, there's people I disagree with about politics, which is one thing. And like what we should do is people that vote the way I do, and I disagree with them. Some people I agree with. Some people I don't vote like, but we agree on lots of things politically. It's not always the same thing, with who you agree with and all. And then there's Trump. And I really feel like Trump is different. I mean, my opposition to Donald Trump being the president ever again after his election in 2016 is, I spend a lot of my life energy trying to make sure that man never affects the country by being president again. And Casey, you think really differently about him. So that's going to be the heartbeat of our conversation. But we're also friends, and we also think about lots of other things. And that's what I think is interesting about all of this is how it is and why it is that the conversation of Donald Trump has broken so many relationships, has broken so many friendships. Casey, is that true for you? Do you feel like you've lost friends or are distant from people you care about?
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I mean, it's a thing. It's a big thing. And, sometimes you realize that it's just something that you cannot talk about because it will impact the relationship. And I think that's sad.
Yeah.
I really do. I think it's sad. And it's one of the things that I love about our friendship is I feel like we can be very honest with each other and vehemently disagree. And yet, as you'll recall, I often end, a lot of our kind of conversations with "Love you, man."
Yeah.
And I think that's so important because we have to get back to being able to love one another no matter what.
Yep. Yeah. And loving across that difference, even when we believe that difference has great implication, when we feel that if politics goes the way I want to see it go in America, you're really worried about things. You're really worried about the well-being of people, the well-being of the country. You think the country would be in really dangerous situation, and that would have great impact on people's lives. So when you're opposed to my ideas and when you're opposed to my thoughts about why Trump shouldn't be president and what I think about Joe Biden and all this, that's not just a political conversation. You actually can play out real world consequences. And obviously I feel the same way. I think that if Donald Trump were elected to that office again, it would have real detrimental effects in real lives. So I'm just putting in the context that we both there's a lot on the line here about our other and current commitments that we have to people and to goodness and all. And that's, so when we say we still love each other and we're still going to talk to each other and we're still going to keep up the conversations, it's not because we're downplaying the consequence of the difference. It's really because of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and we're both very passionate, and I love people that are passionate about anything,
Mhm.
and I
Yeah.
admire people when they're passionate about things. And we both share passion and we have that in common. So,
So I don't know if this is quite true, Casey. It might be when we first started texting about Trump, particularly. I may not have
mhm.
had a guitar hanging over my shoulder. I've been playing guitar for about a year and a half, and I think we've been texting for significantly longer than that. So you've had a
Could be.
guitar though hanging over your shoulder. If you've been on a camera angle like this for a long time, you're a long time and accomplished guitar player. I'm a wannabe. I bring all that up because there might be some moments where, in the midst of all of what we're doing, we might also, like just share a song with each other. We might actually make
I'd
a
love
little goodness, make a little music, have something decent happen, and I kind of like that. I don't know how that's going to play out. I'm not a good enough guitar player to just confidently start playing. I got to work
Hey,
it
but
up a
you're
little bit.
you're improving rapidly,
Thank,
and
yeah,
impressed.
thanks. Thanks.
Yeah.
There are a few people in the world to whom have watched my guitar playing as frequently as you, because I send you little videos of the guitar playing. So,
Well,
um,
and I promise the secret's safe with me.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. A couple of times I've said, if you share this anywhere, that'll be it. I mean, we may not break our relationship over Trump, but if you share this, this video, that would be the end of
I
it.
totally,
Um,
totally understand.
So Casey, we met, like I was saying, I don't know, 35 years ago in 1987. So people probably know when that is, 35, 36 years ago. I was a new youth volunteer, or maybe a youth intern at a church that you were attending. So I was in college, you were a high school senior. So we're,
Yep.
kind of contemporaries. And have known each other through all that. I've started a church. You've started a church. We've both worked for organizations and denominations. Like there's a lot. We're similar in age. We're similar.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
come from the same, from Minnesota where I am, even though you're in Colorado now. Like there's so much that's similar about us,
Yeah.
and then there's this big difference. And I think that's super enlightening. That because sometimes
Fascinating.
when people think about opponents, or sometimes people step into calling opponents enemies, and I just think we have to recast the concept of enemies, but we can talk about that later. But when you think about somebody who's opposed to you, it's easy to, when you don't really know them or understand them, or think, I
Yeah.
have literally no idea who these people are, where they've come from, what they've done, why they think the way they do. Yeah, and Trump,
Right.
a lot of people experience this in families and friendships. They're like, no, these are people super close to me. Like these are people sometimes that raised me, or that I was their parent, and now this thing is happening. And I think that's
Yeah.
particular. Do you think about that much, about how similar we are, and
Oh,
yet how we've ended
yeah.
up in
Oh,
such different spaces?
yeah, very much. I've often thought about it, and I've tried to kind of figure it out, and I doubt there's a real, obvious answer, but I think it's something to explore, and it just goes to show that you can come from a similar background in a similar area. You can be raised in the same city and attend the same church and come to very different conclusions.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it is. I mean, okay, granted, there's been a lot of years since then, so that might, but I don't know,
yeah,
even
sure.
along the path, I mean, I've been with you a number of times in Colorado, before
Yeah,
Trump was
yeah,
elected, and after, and all this. So it's
yeah.
it's not like environmental circumstance is the only explanation, which I think
That's
is
true.
is worth naming
Hmm.
and worth
Hmm.
recognizing. So we're gonna get into it. Anything else you wanna share as far as biography goes, your own or our relationship, or any of
Well,
this?
I want to share one thing real quick, and that is I'm a big fan. I have one of your books here.
Oh, look at that. Yeah, thank you, man. Thank you. You still got it around. Yeah, it's a book I wrote called Christianity Worth Believing. That's sweet of you. Thank you.
I mean, I can literally turn around and put my hand on your book. That's
Well,
kind of
thanks.
cool.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Um, all right. Well, if there's no other biography we need to chat about, should we start talking about some of our perspective divergences in light of
Sure,
our
let's do it.
love for each other? All right. So one of the things we've been texting about recently is Trump's indictment, and I think that the indictment really shines a light on a perspective that we both have. I'm someone who has deep concerns about our justice system, how it functions, who's privileged by it, who's penalized by it. You care about those things. We both want to work on criminal justice reform and goodness and treatment. Yet when it comes to
Yeah.
Trump, I'm pretty confident that the indictments that I've read from the federal government and even the one from New York are legitimate charges that would be brought against anyone because of the crimes that are detailed in those indictments, if they're indeed proven out to be true, after a defense is brought on them. Those are crimes that need to be brought by the Justice Department. And I think Donald Trump has a history of criminal behavior and has dodged it for a very long time. There's a number of lawsuits and criminal proceedings against his businesses and against him and so on. So I think it's just a long legacy of this stuff going on. You think differently about it, though. You see these indictments not holding weight and really being an indicator of something else.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, and I want to back up just for a minute, and I'll admit to you that back in 2016, or before, whenever he announced he was running, and all this started, happening, I'll be the first to admit I had questions about him. I wasn't too sure about him. I wasn't convinced. I didn't really understand who he was and what he was all about, and what he stood for, what he believed, what kind of leader he would be. So I had a lot of questions early on. I wasn't real too sure, and I think some of that is a result of the mainstream media, because from the very beginning they painted him as a monster. They put him in a very, very negative light. And so, as someone who was just trying to figure out what was going on and what in the world, I mean,
Yeah.
so weird that somebody like him would even consider running for president. He was such an outsider, such a non-politician, all that kind of stuff. So I wasn't too sure, and I wanted to reserve judgment. And over the course of time, I began to see that he was not at all the way or the person that the media was portraying. So I think that's the first thing I wanted to mention. And I think that, to be really brutally honest, I think that he was under attack from before he was even inaugurated. The Democrats were saying they were going to impeach him even before he was inaugurated. So, I mean, that tells you something. And if you look at who the players are, who the people are involved, these are all people that hate conservatives, they hate Republicans, and they hate Donald Trump. And these are the players involved in this. So I think there's a bias going on here, and I think we have to look at that very, very carefully.
Yeah. Look, man, so I hear you, and I want to make sure we take time in each of those points because I think they really matter. Maybe we've even texted about this, but look, Donald Trump didn't come out of nowhere to run for president. He's on Oprah back in the 1990s talking about maybe running for president when he accused 3 young black men of a crime in Central Park and called for their execution. That was a setup for him running for president. He had been meeting with Pat Robertson in 2012 to look at a presidential run. So this idea that where does Donald Trump come from? He must be some select person outside the political system. I mean, I'll just tell you, I know that's the story he creates for people so that he can be an outsider to the swamp and all the kind of language. It's not factually accurate, I don't think. And I don't think it's what a lot of people should be believing. Now, granted, most people know the guy as, a bit of a celebrity character, truly like on a celebrity, reality TV show. Not truly much of a businessman per se, but a marketer, and his name is his value and all the rest of it. So he's, he spent his time as a celebrity, and then ran for office. Does that change anything for you? Like when I hear you say Donald Trump comes out of nowhere and all this, I'm like, okay, that's just not. I don't think that's that. Does that?
Well, I hear what you're saying, but he came out of nowhere in the sense that he was not a politician. He was a businessman. Yeah, he was a public figure. he was, I don't know if you want to call him a celebrity, whatever. I mean, celebrity apprentice, of course, but yeah, he was in the public eye for sure. But from a most of the politicians in my lifetime, I can't think of one major politician that was not a politician before they ran for president. Can you?
Well, yeah, yeah. There are people who have run for president and weren't politicians. Yeah, I mean, in fact, some of the people in Trump's cabinet who also ran for president, Carson and others.
Okay.
You have Forbes.
But nobody
So yeah,
won.
nobody's won who didn't have any experience being a
Yeah.
doing something similar to the job, which we can get to
Yeah.
performance maybe in another episode, like how we think he did, because I think he was a disastrous president because the things he wanted to accomplish that could have been decent, he didn't. And the things that were harmful, he did. So we can sort of get to that later. But yeah, I get your point that he didn't come from the same sector. But truthfully, and here's the hard thing, any president that we end up with, and just sort of go back through the history, short of a sort of George H.W. Bush, who came from being vice president and didn't really have a name himself, these are people that have had to build some public reputation. And whether you can do that as a politician and build some public reputation, or you're having to do that as you're moving, it's happening. All right. So the other point I think was important here is, and this is your narrative and story, and I think it's important. I think it's true for millions of people, and a lot of people who think the way I do and have Trump supporting friends currently in 2023 don't recognize this, that some people moved closer to Trump after he was elected president and took office in 2017. Like they joined in more fervently, and you represent that kind of thing. You said that you thought the media was telling a story that wasn't true. I guess I have a hard time with that because the media that I watched, which is kind of the left-leaning media, middle to left-leaning media with a little bit of occasional Fox News in there, only to sort of see kind of what the other political side is saying. They were just running clips of him saying things like, you should punch him in the face, or I'm a celebrity, I can grab women by the, I don't want to say it on this podcast because I don't want to be as crass as Donald Trump. And or him saying, hey, Russia, if you have Hillary's emails, I want you to release those, or we're going to have a Muslim ban, or they're sending us the criminals, or sending us the rapists. Like this stuff that he was saying is what the media, that's why people like me were so concerned about someone like this being president. But when you hear the things Trump actually says, and then the media reports it, that lands for you differently though, doesn't it? Like it didn't impact you in the same way.
Well, I think you're making my point to some extent, because you're actually admitting that the media was actually cherry picking what they wanted to portray for this particular person. And the media does this all the time. They pick out what they want. And I'm personally thankful that I don't have video footage of me saying stupid things and stupid things that I've said that are out there for someone to go and find and put on, the media, because I think if we're honest with each other and we're honest with ourselves, we've all said stupid things. So, if someone wanted to take me down and there was footage out there of me saying dumb things and rude things, I'd probably be in just as much trouble. So you're kind of making my point. They actually they went out and they found the things that they wanted to portray. And, they leave out other things, and this is what media does, and especially the mainstream media. And they were wanting to create a certain narrative of Trump because they did not want this man to be elected. And so it was basically a propaganda
But why didn't
campaign.
they? Why? So I want to circle back to this because I think there's something really important in there. But in your story, as you tell it, why did the media not want him to be elected? I mean, did they not want any? Is it just that he's a Republican? Was there some? I'm talking about before he was ever in office. Launch of the. Why was there and look, I can barely say with a straight face that the media was biased against Trump in 2015 and 2016. The guy got all the media attention. Like it was, I watched so many Trump rallies on my TV.
Yeah,
And I'll tell you, as somebody who wanted to have a Hillary Clinton
sure.
yard sign in my yard, but the campaign was so dysfunctional in Minnesota, I couldn't even get a yard sign. Um, I never saw coverage of her. Now,
Oh,
that was
wow.
her own campaign's doing, but I saw so much Donald Trump, the access he was given by the media, the
Mhm,
level to
mhm.
which he just everything he did. So I'm a little confused about that backstory, which we don't have to spend a lot of time on because now we're talking 7 years
Mm,
ago. But I do think
sure.
it's indicative of like a view of the world. Why? Like,
Mhm.
is it really true that they only
Yeah.
cherry picked?
Well, I think that they did. Sure, they covered him a lot and whatnot, but just look at the difference between the way the mainstream media treated Barack Obama and the way they treated Trump. I mean, it's just so. I mean, anybody with some common sense here, with any sense of objectivity, could see the difference. And it, it's just there now. Why did they not want him to be president? Number one, he's a Republican. He's conservative, and mainstream media is not for people who are conservative.
Hmm.
And then number two, I think that because it's my opinion, my humble opinion, that the mainstream media is working for the Democrat Party and has for a long time, that they do what the Democrat Party wants. So the Democrats don't want Donald Trump to be president, or didn't at the time, and still don't. And A lot of people in mainstream media are Democrats themselves and don't like Donald Trump. So, and I think they were, to be honest with you, I think they were afraid of what
Hmm.
someone like him would do if they got into office, because he's a disruptor. He's someone who does not go along with the status quo, would not continue the games that I think are played in Washington D.C. And he was an unknown. He's like, nobody knows what this guy is going to do, and I don't mean that in the way that you would think of it, like, oh no, he's going to like destroy the world or
Yeah,
whatever.
right.
Uh, I,
Destroy NATO or something. Yeah, like that.
yeah. No, I think he was just an unknown commodity because he wasn't a politician. So it's like, what
Hmm.
is this guy going to do? He's going to walk in to Washington D.C. and he's very unpredictable, and he could disrupt everything. I mean, he could change a lot of things that we don't want changed. So I think that's why, in a
Hmm.
nutshell, the mainstream media, the Democrat media, as I call it, did not want someone like Donald Trump, and they definitely don't now.
Yeah, I hear you. Okay, as somebody who works inside of systems that interface with the Democratic Party, I can assure you, the Democrats are not running the media. Man, they can. Uh, it's no political party is. It's just we have too complex of a system. It's not how it goes. All that. But I will
Right,
say,
but
look,
you have
but
wait. You do have to admit though that there are a lot of Democrats, and I would say
yeah.
if you an honest poll, there are more Democrats
Hmm.
uh, on TV in the mainstream media doing the reporting, doing the talking, than there are Republicans. Is that fair to
Maybe.
say?
Maybe. I mean, on TV, well, all I'm saying is that on TV, there's just such a small number of people that are on television at all. There's such a small number of
Mm,
reporters. You and I could probably sit here and name every reporter or on air personality that we see on a regular basis. We could come up with the list, and
mhm,
it's not going to be that long. You probably had more people at your birthday party than is that list. So that's a teeny list of people. Now, there's a lot of producers behind all that. There's a lot of investigative reporters, a lot of editorial boards. There's a whole very sophisticated and complex system. So, does the
mhm,
media have a
mhm.
perspective? Yes, because the media is wide ranging. I mean, from Steve Bannon and Newsmax and Fox News and the OAN network and all the like firmly rooted in the right side, and then Mother Jones or maybe Rolling Stone or Vanity Fair on another side, and then NBC and MSNBC and CBS and PBS. But look, if you're trying to suggest that somehow PBS and ABC and NBC and CNN and the owners of all of that, that everybody conspired together to take down Donald Trump and couldn't pull it off. I just have to say, and I know this comes up a lot in
Well,
our
I didn't.
conversations, I don't
Okay, I
think
didn't
it's
say that.
possible to
Okay, wait a
believe that
minute.
these people were all
You asked
working
me. You
together.
asked. Okay, but that's not what I said, and that's not what you asked me. They weren't conspiring. I wouldn't. I wouldn't use that phrase. They just happened to all be on the same page,
I see.
by and large. And I'm not talking about the conservative media you listed. I'm talking about the stuff that most people watch: ABC, NBC, CBS, MSNBC, CNN. Uh, Most
Fox.
of the people
Yeah.
that are talking
Mhm.
on those media commentaries, and channels, they do not like Trump, and they are not Republican, and they are not conservative. So
Yeah.
there's
I,
that.
I
Now, I'm
I
not
hope they're
saying they all
neutral,
conspired.
but they may not be. Yeah, I
You
hear
know,
you. Okay, that's fair.
and
Yeah,
then,
I think that's a good pushback. That's
one more thing I want to say. One more thing I want to say. When you and I were growing up, Doug, the mainstream media was, I'd say, left leaning. Just generally speaking, they've always kind of been left leaning. But back when you and I were growing up, Walter Cronkite and all these guys that we would watch,
Dan Rather.
at
Yeah.
least they would try to, yeah, Dan
Yeah.
Rather, at least they would try to stay with the appearance that they were neutral. Hey, I'm neutral. I'm not going to tip my hat one way or
Hmm.
the other as to what I think. I'm just trying to report the news. I'm just
Yeah.
trying to report what's going on. And you could always kind of, if you really watched carefully, you could kind of tell that there was still that leaning there. But at least you could tell also that they were trying to be new, to stay neutral, because they didn't want to be accused
Sure.
of that. And it's so different today. It's so different today. It's like nobody even cares that someone knows that they're anti-conservative, anti-Republican, and definitely anti-Donald Trump. Because what I feel like they've done is they've said, what they've tried to create is, this is normal. This is how normal people think. Normal people think
Hmm.
that Donald Trump is an
Yeah, good
awful,
point.
awful, terrible, no good, awful person. So
Yeah, I hear you. No, yeah. Look. There's a point made there that the media was in a very difficult situation, especially as the campaign heated up in 2016, and then Trump's time in office, standing in speaking about Charlottesville and saying there's good people on both sides. There are people who in the media were saying, look, general objectivity is not what we can have right now. We have to say, I'm a reporter or I'm an anchor, but I just need to also say, I'm not giving equal sides to arguments that this country has decided to set aside and approaches that are taken that people thought were really dangerous. So I do think Donald Trump put a pressure point on some things that has caused us to ask some deeper questions. I think the media could be more balanced when the options were more balanced. I think there's a lot of people, and look, I'm one of them. I sat right behind me in the corner and made a video just after Trump's election and said there's 4 possible outcomes here. He could end up being not what we thought and things are going to be okay. He could be super incompetent. He could be really competent and destroy things, or maybe the systems are going to protect and are going to hold, and we're not going to get rid of the justice system, or we're not going to get rid of the FBI, and we're not going to turn on NATO, and we're not, like, things that I really thought were a deep, deep concern that Donald Trump said himself he wanted to bring an end to, that I thought would be disastrous for America. So, okay, yeah, we were not dealing with a typical candidate. Point well made by you. He was not typical, but he also was saying things, dude, that, I mean, the stuff that I rattled off earlier, short of what he said on a media bus to a media personality that he can grab women by the genitalia and they like it and let him do it because he's famous. Other than that, everything I quoted, he said publicly to a camera. He didn't accidentally get covered and somebody heard that he said something, or what happens a lot, somebody turns on their phone and sticks it in a what they thought was otherwise an unrecorded meeting, and someone got sloppy with their language. Happens all the time. That's not the stuff I'm talking about. I'm literally talking about the proposals, or, hey, Russia, if you're listening, kinds of responses, or initial, I'm running for president. Why? Because they're sending us their rapists, they're sending us their murderers, and these are bad people and we need to keep them out, and all this kind of stuff, which is a part of a language set that I will just say is what terrifies people when you start to talk about migrants the way he talked about them and talks about certain people. And there's a movement that we've seen happen in the 20th and 21st century that's dangerous. So I'm just saying, like, I know you feel like the media is biased and if Trump just got a fair shake, but I feel like the guy got all the attention he wanted. And what he chose to do with it at rallies was say, I'd like someone to punch him in the face. I just, okay. So I guess we can kind of
Oh,
leave that I think there's a real difference here about what's being covered and like, boy, what about the good stuff? Well, by golly, what about the good stuff? Where is it? Like the guy gets all the attention. And then I'll just be done for a minute. I'll love your response. People will say to me all the time, and maybe you have too, like, oh, those are just tweets. He's just writing things. As if what the president of the United States, our presidential candidate, is saying to the public shouldn't be covered because he's doing it with his thumbs on a phone as a and like this idea that, well, why do you keep covering his tweets? And then you're like, because he's the president of the United States. This is where my brain just sort of starts to swirl around. So how do you, okay, I know that's a
yeah.
lot, but take
Yeah,
take
no,
take a swing at any of that stuff.
certainly a fair point, and you know, I mean, I keep trying to go back to, okay, you hate Donald Trump. I get it. You think he's dangerous. Okay, I get it. And I think that honestly, if it is really true, if Trump cured cancer today, a lot of people would still hate him no matter what. And I get it. Well, in some ways
Mhm.
I don't get it, but I get that that's how people feel. He's a lightning rod figure. But I do believe that no matter who you are, no matter what you're doing, if you're running for president or whatever you and what you believe, that you deserve to be heard. That's about our
Hmm.
First Amendment rights. And so I feel like the media not only cherry picked those certain things that you guys love to bring up, the punch in the face and the other stuff, grab and all that stuff, um, but it's important that the media cover it all because actually, some of the things that you've brought up, the media actually edited out the context of some
Hmm.
of his statements. And for instance, part of the indictment thing, they show the video of his speech and they actually cut out the middle. They start with the beginning and then they cut out the middle and they go to the end. And the part they cut out was walk peacefully and patriotically toward the Capitol building. That was cut out of the video
Hmm.
that they
Yeah.
showed. So all this stuff is going on, and I don't think it's right to say, "Oh, he's so dangerous. We can't cover that. We can't show that. We can't. That's just too dangerous." No. Let's let the people decide. I agree with you. Cover his
Hmm.
tweets. Cover it all, and let's let the people make the
Yeah.
decision about who should be president. Let's not make the decision for them or try to influence them as to who's right and who's wrong, who's better, who's awful,
Yeah.
whatnot. Let's
Look, I
let the
hear you.
people
Look,
decide.
the Trump hatred is deep. I just want to be on the record and say to myself, and of course to you, I do not hate Donald Trump as a person. Uh, I don't. I don't know the man. I think he is a threat to the well-being of this planet if he's ever president again. And I think that he should never get anywhere near the White House. Do I also believe he's a beloved child of God, salt of the earth, light of the world? 100%. He's a beloved
Sure.
grandfather and father and maybe husband. I don't know. Sometimes I wonder, but what do I know? But he's a human being like everyone else. And my issues
That's
are with how he performs as a person in the role of a public figure being or seeking to be the president of the United States. I know that's not true of everyone. I wish it were. Look, I know people who hate Barack Obama. They've said it to my face. I don't know what you're feeling, but like they despise that guy, not just
Mhm,
because of him as president. They despise him. So
mhm,
that's
mhm.
a very real thing, which I don't think is only Donald Trump, I guess is my point. And I think a lot of people, like how you felt like, boy, he was really unfairly treated. a lot of people, millions of them, also moved the other way, even voted for him and then said, "Oh my gosh, I had no idea that was coming." So I think that's interesting that like you represent a person who wasn't so sure and then have moved more in his, where you literally wear a red hat, which we should have you turn around in a minute. Um, uh, and other people move, and other people have moved the other way. So that's a reality that we that we all share, right? Is that Donald Trump
Yeah.
is a character in his running for president. Like, look, I don't care what he did on The
Mhm.
Apprentice. I don't care what he did with his steak company. I don't care what he did with his casinos that he managed to go broke on. I don't even care what he did with his colleges. I don't think he should have cheated, you know, his nonprofit that got shut down and then they was banned from ever running a nonprofit again. I think that's a sign of someone who's not up to any good. But it's not about that stuff. It's just
Mhm.
about the hands on the presidency. And I feel like this idea that like, hey, let's just get a disruptor in there and be president, like that's just not my deal. Like I've never thought that's a job for beginners. And I think it hasn't served us well. So I just want to be clear. Like I don't hate
No,
Donald
I
Trump, but I
and I
want to say
appreciate.
I'm looking at the chat here of people making comments because this is a live stream. Oh yeah, no, there's some people who clearly do. Not just in the chat, but I'm just reminded by the fact that they do. Yeah.
Yeah, and here's the other thing is, it's not like Joe Biden didn't say, "Let's take him out behind the shed and beat him up" or whatever. I mean,
Yeah.
people have said, it's both sides. People say weird things, especially when they're in the public eye and they're trying to get attention and all this stuff. And I don't condone that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
But I think there's something deeper going on, and that's
Yeah.
that's really what I think we need to address here in our conversations. And I'm loving this, by the way. I really appreciate you letting me talk. And I just love the fact that we can do this. But I think that Donald Trump represents for half of the country uh, something deeper
Hmm.
that is going on. And I think that there's a lot of people out there like me who really feel that the country's going in the wrong direction, that we need to get back to conservative principles, that we need smaller government, not bigger government. We need less taxes, not more taxes. We need to get back to our founding principles and morals of our country. There's a lot of things that I think people like me that are out there that I think, half the country are kind of feeling this way. And they're like, you know what? Um, Things are not going well. And the people that are in power are not doing a good job. And they're not taking us in the right direction. There's a lot of bad stuff going on. There's weaponization of the DOJ and going after political targets and enemies. I mean, there used to be a time when the presidency was so sacred that, I mean, even somebody like President Nixon said, you know what, I'm just going to resign because I don't want to put the country through this. This is
Hmm.
not good for
Yeah.
the country. Whether I'm innocent or guilty, it doesn't matter. The country is more important than this. And so, we used to kind of have this sacred feeling about the presidency. Like, let's not even pick a Supreme Court justice during an election year. Let's not do this. We've got bigger things going on here that we've got to protect the country and respect the office of the president and not take it down this road. So I think even people that strongly dislike Donald Trump are going to be sorry that we're going down this road. And I don't mean that in a weird way. I just mean we're setting
Yeah.
a terrible precedent for our country. And I think it's sad.
Yeah, dude.
So I,
Look,
I
yeah,
think,
I hear you. Can I
you know what I'm
just respond? Because I mean, other than the one statement of want it to be conservative principles, most of it I really agree with. I do think we need a different tax structure. I think people who make as much as you and I do shouldn't be paying taxes, and people like Donald Trump should be paying a lot more. Yeah, I think we're right. We should fix our tax problem. We do have a very severe tax problem, and we need to adjust all that. We do need to believe in our institutions again. We do need to make sure that the Justice Department is not used for political ends. And those are the very things that make me think, how can you support Donald Trump? Blows up the deficit, sends Bill Barr over to the Ukraine with Rudy Giuliani. We now have testimony from people all across the justice system where he wanted to use the FBI and the IRS to turn against his political end. Like the things that you are afraid are happening, we know happened under Trump. So it all kind of, and then this idea that the presidency is more important than the person. Yeah, totally. That's, I mean, uh, this is why it's so shocking to me that you'd be like, no, but what Donald Trump should do for America and for the presidency is not say, I am so divisive and I'm so harmful, I'm not going to run again. He basically said, I didn't lose the last election, and now started running again immediately after the end of that election. And then the Supreme Court thing, totally. The guy appointed 2 Supreme Court justices within months of the election. So I agree with you on those things. And that's partly why I'm so befuddled. And I've written this to you a bunch of times, like, why would you be supporting Trump then in light of those things you just said? So that's where I think you're right. We should get to whatever the deeper level is, because it feels like we agree on those things, and a president shouldn't behave like such. You think Biden's behaving that way. I think it's provable that Trump did. So what are you doing supporting the guy, or do you not believe he behaved that way? And that's the thing we've been back and forth on text, to the degree that my wife is like, "Are you texting Casey again? Stop it. Put your phone down." Right. So do you have any thoughts on all that?
Yeah, goodness gracious, we don't even want to get into the whole Biden thing right now because you talk
That'll be a
about
separate episode. Yeah.
yeah, you talk about things that are provable, that are happening right now, and that have happened while he was vice president, and so on and so forth. And the corruption is just unbelievable, and it's all provable. There's all evidence all over the
Mm-mm.
place for it. And so, yeah, I just think that Trump, for a lot of people, embodies somebody who says, you know what, we need to clean things up. We've got a lot of messes that need to get cleaned up in this country. And, the thing is, he's got a platform, right? So
Mm-hmm.
instead of cherry picking the stuff that you don't like that he said, let's look at his platform. He
Yeah.
wants economic prosperity for all. He wants to secure America's borders. He wants to restore public safety. He believes in peace through strength, which we've got a serious problem right now with China and Russia. He believes in reclaiming free speech because our free speech is under attack, and his in particular right now. And of course, I know we strongly disagree with this one, but he wants to dismantle the deep state, which that could be a whole nother episode.
It will be.
But
Yeah.
I think that those are the things that people like me go, you know what? It's like how did they say it back in those days? It's like the little guy,
Hmm.
the average guy who Democrats used to try to represent, lunch pail Joe. Now he's made like $50 million under the table that nobody knew about with foreign countries. Now it seems like, believe it or not, it's Trump that represents the little guy. And that's what resonates with people. It's like,
Yeah.
no, he's actually not out for the rich people. He's out to help the average working blue collar guy that's paying too much in taxes and not making enough money to keep up with inflation. And we're seeing our financial situation go down the tubes. So I just think that's kind of what's going on, and that's
Yeah.
why people resonate with him. But here's the deal: if it's not Trump, it's okay. I'm okay with that. It doesn't have
Whew.
to be Trump.
Okay.
Okay, so we can agree on that. I think we need to have someone else.
Hmm.
Okay, whether it's Trump or someone else, we need somebody else in there that believes in these things. So
Yeah. Well said. And look, again, find myself deeply agreeing. And I remember a Republican Party. I voted for Republicans a bunch in the 2000s. I voted for Bush twice. Like, I'm not always been as opposed to Republicans as I am now. And the reason I am is because of how they've chosen to behave. The things you mentioned, man, I would love it if what they really cared about was the economic burden on the little guy. Republicans. That would be great. But I saw the tax bill that they did in 2017. It didn't do that. It exploded the deficit and passed it on to the wealthiest people who pay the highest amount of taxes in our country. That's what they did. Now, it's their choice, but I don't think you get to make that choice and then say we're helping the little guy. They want to cut food benefits. They want to cut support. They want to increase the burden that people. So we can talk about all that. We're not talking about border security. We're talking about a wall. I'd love to talk about border security. As I've said, we go to the border a lot. I want you to come with me and we'll talk about border security. What it means to secure the border is to have an immigration system that works and make sure the drugs stop coming in trucks like they come. It's not a wall. Trump doesn't want border security. He wants a wall. So like we can go down the whole, I try to write down, a whole bunch of the things, strength through our military. The guy wants to end NATO and wants to end our military alliances around the country and call it strength. So yeah, look, I would love to disagree on all that stuff, but we can't, because so many people say things like Trump won the election, everything is a fraud. The justice, like
Oh,
as soon as
wait,
the
hold on.
critiques against Trump come, here's what I feel like happens, Casey. As soon as the critiques come about Trump and that policy, because we can talk about common political policy all day. I love that stuff. But honestly, people talk about Trump, and then all of a sudden, it's as much as you say there's people that just hate him and want to stop him. There are people who are just like, oh, if Trump says it, then it's okay. Like he can't break the law. He's above it all. They look at actual federal indictments brought by, which is something we want to talk about today. Now we're running out of time, but who wanted to, federal indictments brought by grand juries from the independent counsel of the Justice Department. People are like, oh no, it's just Biden. Just Biden. They're just trying to cover up for Hunter Biden. And like, honestly, that can't be taken seriously in American politics, that people are like, oh, that's what's going on. Grand juries and the Justice Department is all doing the bidding of the president's son. I mean, honestly, Casey, it just makes my head go like that. So,
Okay,
okay.
but hold on. All right, let me respond. Okay.
Yeah,
So
please.
let's look at the timeline of Trump's indictments. Okay. So on March 16th, James Comer reveals that the Biden family has been receiving payments from other countries. And right after that, on April 4th, we get the New York criminal indictment from Bragg. June 8th, we get the GOP views the Biden bribery 1023 form. They get to actually look at it finally. Ray finally let them see it. And the very next day, Trump's indicted on the classified documents case. July 26th, Hunter plea deal falls apart. The very next day, July 27th, Trump is now charged with additional charges from Jack Smith. July 31st, Devin Archer testifies. The very next day, we get the January 6th indictment. So how can you say that these things aren't related? That the Biden administration, and we actually have proof now that Joe Biden told Merrick Garland, "You need to go after Trump. Stop playing around here. You need to go
No,
after
we
him."
don't. No, we don't have that proof.
We have proof
No,
of
we
that. I'll
don't.
show you.
Okay. Okay. You should. Yeah, we'll come back. But I just,
Well,
that's one I just can't no, we don't. And no, he didn't. But anyway, go on with the rest of it.
I'll send it to you. So, so there's a connection here. There's a direct correlation between what's actually being revealed right now and these Trump indictments. So, yes, there's something going on here. You can't deny that.
Well, I do
So,
deny
anyway,
it, Casey. And here's why. Because like grand jury indictments are going to come out on Tuesdays or Thursdays, because that's when grand juries meet, and it's the process. The Alvin Bragg case was going on for more than 2.5 years. All of these are cases that have thousands of people engaged in them and a time schedule that they're on that has nothing to do with the particular news cycle as released by
let's.
Republicans.
So it's
So
totally
the
coincidental.
idea, and it is coincidence, or they know, like we've known for weeks that the January 6th indictments were coming. We've been texting about it. So maybe maybe Republicans release a whole thing because they're trying to mess up the news cycle. I don't know. But here's the point. It doesn't change anything. The day, what day a news story about Hunter Biden or a news story about Joe Biden's phone calls, it becomes a news story. And when an indictment comes, what does that possibly have to do? You literally think, and this is what gets me, and it's hard for me not to say this in a way that feels dismissive, but I love you and I can't believe you think this. You believe that the Justice Department and that the grand jury system would indict a president, a former president of the United States, for actions as president because they want to cover up a news cycle.
Well, that's not the only reason, but I think the timing is particularly interesting. Let's just put it that way.
Well, it might be,
But
but your point was you can't deny that there was a news story and then there was an indictment. So what I think you're saying, and I want to take you seriously, you believe that they used that apparatus and federal judges so that people wouldn't know that the 1023 form was now made
well,
available? Like,
well,
honestly,
well, okay.
Casey,
So
you
well,
can't
back up
believe
for a
that.
second.
So what's going on? You can't
Yeah.
possibly believe that.
Well, no, what's going on is the Justice Department and the FBI have been weaponized by our current administration to go after a political enemy. That's the first thing that's going on. The fact that they happen to time things the way that they have is just helping to continue this narrative with the public to make sure that the news cycle gets dominated by Trump's a bad guy. Look at how bad Trump is, instead of, look this other way. Look,
Hmm.
this is looking really bad for Biden right now. But you know what? This is really bad. So let's look the other way and let's focus on how bad Trump is. I think there's some intentionality there. Yes. So, that's
Okay.
that's just how I look at it.
All right.
So,
Well, no, look, I hear you. And if somebody ever inquires me, one of the things I think about belief, and we've talked about this before, is beliefs are not things that we feel like we can always control. Like what we believe about something, you can't always defend it, right? Like no matter what the belief is, you don't just start and stop beliefs like you're standing in the gum aisle and picking a gum, one brand of
mhm.
gum versus another. Like they're deeply embedded. So I'm not trying to push you to defend something that you're that your belief wasn't framed around the defense that I'm demanding from you. But I do want to just raise this with you and with other people too, because this is a classic talking point. My guess is you found online somewhere where people laid out these dates. Like this is not something Casey was just like, hey, this is kind of interesting. I noticed something today. That's in a presentation because it's out there in the talking points brought to you by the Republican Party. I get it. But it's not actually a legitimate argument to respond to federal indictments against the
Okay.
former president of the United States. Like that's where it just feels, and I know you don't
Okay.
like
Well,
it when I call it conspiracies and other things, but I don't have another word for how the entire apparatus of the Justice Department would be used to stop a news cycle, short of saying it's a conspiracy to stop a news cycle.
I think that the mainstream media has an agenda, and any way that they can, keep the focus on how bad Trump is and minimize or not even cover, in a lot of cases, what's going on with the Joe Hunter Biden thing. I mean, this is a big scandal, and we're not even talking about that because, like the mainstream media, all you guys want to talk about is Trump. So you guys are actually more obsessed with Trump than I am.
Well, that's
Because I
probably
keep
true.
saying,
That's probably true.
it could be anybody, anybody but who we have right now is probably going to be better. But the question I want to pose to you, and I don't know how much time
Mhm.
we have left because I want to play my guitar, but the final question I want to pose to you is explain to me, please, what crime did Donald J. Trump commit? What crime did he commit?
Do you want me to do the January 6th election
Sure,
interference crimes
sure.
first?
Let's stick with that one for now.
Well,
Sure.
he criminally acted with others, his co-conspirators, the people he partnered with, to stop and to interfere with a legal governmental function, the counting and certification of the Electoral College votes. That is a crime. That's the crime he committed. He chose to defraud the United States government in that action. And he violated the constitutional rights for people to have their votes counted. So those are the three general areas, and there's two charges with each. Those are the charges: to interfere with a federal process, anyone who did it, but especially the sitting president of the United States who uses his power to do so, then to defraud the government, and then to prevent people from exercising their rights. Those are the crimes.
Wow. Yeah, I just don't see it that way. I mean, this isn't the first time a president has either lost or won and said, I don't think that was right. I mean, Hillary said she lost, and that the election was rigged. She said the election was stolen from her. So why can't Donald Trump
He
say,
can.
"I think this
Donald
election
Trump can
was
say
stolen
it,
from"?
but what Hillary Clinton didn't do was when the certification of the Electoral College was happening in December and then in January of 2016 and 2017, she didn't try to have people move to stop it from happening. That's what Donald Trump is charged
Well,
with doing. He can say whatever he wants. Absolutely. I mean, the indictment
right.
even begins by saying Donald Trump can say whatever he wants. What he can't do is use those words as action to prevent a legal proceeding from going forward, which is what he did by the testimony in the indictment of Republicans all across the country in states from Wisconsin and Pennsylvania and Michigan and Arizona and Georgia, and the vice president of the United States, excuse me, and the former attorney general at the time, William Barr. So all of these people are saying what Donald Trump did was to interfere with the counting of that. And his own lawyer this week just said that, well, he was, just trying to put a pause on it. All he wanted to do was put a pause. That is the act of interfering because it has a constitutional date by which it needs to happen. And he wanted to pause it. That's the crime. Now, you may not like it that that's a crime or want to believe that the crime is what he said, but it's not. That's why these are indictments that have been coming for 2.5 years of investigation, not driven by, Monday there was a bad news story about Joe Biden. Somebody better put together federal charges against Trump. Okay, that was a little dismissive. Sorry about that. But that's the charge. That's what's going on, and I think those are really bad crimes. Frankly, I know I get it that you don't because we've texted about it, but I do think they're real crimes.
Okay. Well, my response is we'll see if it's all proven to be true
Yeah,
because
for sure.
I think all he was doing was pursuing legal options. He was just looking at what are my legal options. I have attorneys. I'm going to ask my attorneys for their legal advice. What are my legal? If I really think if I'm the president and I run for reelection and I supposedly lose and I don't think the election was totally done honestly and fairly and with integrity, I'm going to say, well, what are my options? What is within my legal right to do anything about it? And I think that's all he was doing, and we will see how it plays out.
Yeah. Okay. That's a great point. If what he did was what his legal options were. Now you've read the indictment. You told me, so you know that his lawyers, at the time when he was the president on this matter, said to him, "You have exhausted all of your legal routes. You've challenged him in court. You've challenged him with the secretaries of state. You've done all the things. The certification now is ceremonial. The decisions have been made by the states. And this is a federal process to respect the state's choices of electoral representatives." And that's what he chose to interfere with. It will be determined by law, and it's going to be clear. This is not going to be a complicated case, whether obstructing the certification of those as a legal procedure was a criminal act or not. You're for sure right. He needs to be given the chance to defend himself on those charges. Yeah, for sure. All right. Should we pause it here? Hey, I'll just tell people in coming episodes, I've been leading this one. In coming episodes, we're going to switch hats, not red and blue, but roles. And Casey will be leading the discussion and interrogating me on the things that I think and why I think Joe Biden should be reelected president if he therefore chooses to run. So we're going to get a chance for the swish and sway of these conversations. All right, so we hope y'all dug it. If you have any comments for us and you're on the streams right now and you want those, Casey's got a song for us, which I think is just the best because we're good friends. And one of the things we can hold in common is music. And so, Casey, I'm not going to totally play along with you, but I am just going to have my guitar in my hand too, just so we can feel like, I don't know. In our first episode, we at least played along with each other. So, all right, thanks everybody for listening. Casey, bring us a little goodness.
That was pretty bad.
No, that was great, my man. That was a great pick. A song by America at the end of our first
That's right.
episode of Red Hat, Blue Hat Talk.
How can you beat that, man?
Genius. Genius. I
Love
love
you,
it.
man.
Hey, love you, buddy. All right, y'all. We'll be back, in coming Mondays. And
Oh,
thanks for
let
being.
me just
Oh
turn my
yeah,
head around.
I forgot. Yeah, it says Trump was right on his hat. Uh,
There you go.
just the best. Well, he was right about a few
Love you.
things.
Love you.
Okay. All right. Love you, buddy. Hey, yo, we'll talk to you later. Share this widely if you can, or if you would, and let us know what you think we should talk about too. If you've got some input for us, you can send an email to podcast@votecommongood.com. Podcast@votecommongood.com. I'm about to stop this, so if you put comments in wherever you're watching too, and we'll be able to see those in a little bit. All right, Casey, we'll talk to you soon.
All right, buddy.